forces bombed a building that allegedly housed an active Hamas hacking group.
Cyber domain is emerging as a new frontier for battle.
Conventional warfare and cyber attacks coming together.
Cyber weapons blur the lines of war and peace.
In today's conflicts, they are permanent. There's no declaration of war.
They target the weakest link in the chain, the human beings.
Battle lines are tested as nations launch shadowy cyber attacks on civilians.
What would be an ethical way of conducting warfare in cyberspace?
Cyber technology enables the attacker to hide himself.
The laws governing cyber warfare will need a reboot.
Cybersecurity is borderless, so it's essential for us to engage regionally and internationally.
For me, the fear always is, what if?
Tamil Nadu, India. Kudankulam, a fishing city by the coast, a small agricultural city. Once, Kudankulam was unremarkable and unfamiliar to Indians everywhere, until it became the site of the country's largest nuclear power plant. It was not a popular move.
The protests at Kudankulam had a lot of issues combined with them. First was the general anti-nuclear climate that had started off because of Fukushima. Personally, I'm a big supporter of nuclear energy. That said, one of the things about nuclear power is that wherever it is, you need to take great care of it.
Pukral Singh is an independent cyber threat analyst. He was a former researcher at the National Technical Research Organization, India's equivalent of the American NSA. In September 2019, Pukraj received a tip-off from an international cyber researcher. Kudankulam nuclear power plant had been hacked.
I've seen pretty bad things happening in cyberspace, especially in Indian cyberspace. But I believe that these attacks were a notch above, and it really caught my attention. And my first instinct was to inform the right people in the government, which I, of course, did.
Well, there's some big breaking news which is coming in after NPCIL admitted that yes, indeed, there was a malware attack at the Kudankulam nuclear power plant. Now, MDMK chief Vaiko has demanded permanent closure of the Kudankulam nuclear power plant.
The kind of vantage point which the attackers had on the network, it was a highly privileged vantage point. They pretty much controlled every aspect of the administrative or IT network. They had fully privileged administrative access to the network.
Now, when you gain access to the administrative side of things, you have a list. You have the payrolls, who got paid what, everybody who's working at the reactor, what their designations are, where they're working, which breaks that fundamental security paradigm.
They target the weakest link in the chain, the human beings. So we believe that certain scientists from the nuclear establishment were targeted. They were sent luring emails. When they clicked on that, their computers, we believe, were compromised.
It might appear that data theft in itself is not a big deal, but consider, number one, there could be sensitive information among the data. Number two, there could be passwords of people in that data, and people reuse passwords, so those people might have access to sensitive systems and they could be broken into.
When you sit on such a network for large amounts of time, you gain very valuable reconnaissance information. With that information in hand, you are pretty much able to do anything. If it had been the will of the adversary, they could have pretty much undertaken disruptive attacks as well, which they did not.
What could the information that they gained be used for at a later stage? For me, the fear always is, what if? And in nuclear terms, you always have to think about what if.
Cyber attacks on nuclear facilities have succeeded in the past. In 2010, investigators found that 15 Iranian nuclear facilities had been infiltrated and attacked by a malicious software worm. Introduced into the system when a worker inserted an infected USB drive. This infamous malware has come to be known as Stuxnet.
Stuxnet was actually one of the very, very complex malware, and it was spread over USB and also other mechanisms, and it was very, very, very targeted to one specific programmable controller to manipulate the centrifuge speeds, and that's the case.
Stuxnet made the centrifuges speed up erratically, so they'd break down. This stopped the enrichment of uranium, fuel for nuclear fission. Nearly 1,000 centrifuges were ruined this way, delaying Iran's nuclear ambitions. Stuxnet proved that cyber attacks could destroy physical machines on an unprecedented scale.
Stuxnet opened a kind of new page in the cyber attack world. In this sense, because Stuxnet was conducted, it was the first and biggest this kind of large-scale attack against cyber physical systems.
Cyber physical systems include critical infrastructure like power plants, water treatment plants, and petrochemical plants. Once run by human operators, these sensitive and finely tuned systems are now controlled automatically by computers and sensors. The control systems are usually isolated from external networks, but they aren't impossible to breach. In Ukraine, 2 days before Christmas in 2015, cyber hackers shut down a power grid, causing a blackout.
This occurred during winter, so you can imagine the amount of disruption and potential physical harm that this could have caused. Since then, we have seen other cyber attacks have wide-ranging physical effects.
If a power grid is being attacked, so there'll be no power to the data centers. So can you imagine what will happen to our financial hub? And hospitals, there are power required by hospital for maintaining, for instance, oxygen tank or surgery rooms or healthcare systems. So this is the kind of thing that will impact companies, consumers, citizens, everyone.
A cyber attack similar to what happened in Ukraine can be simulated in this special lab that mimics a small power plant.
Black energy that attacked Ukraine power grids, that's where the circuit breaker was open, the power to the consumer was lost.
The Singapore University of Technology and Design houses a cybersecurity research center called iTrust. iTrust has a range of test beds that emulate critical infrastructure.
What we have is totally operational. That's been constructed with consultations with the industry professionals. We invite international hackers physically over here in iTrust to hack our testbeds. In the process of them hacking the testbed, we try to determine if you can detect the attack that's been launched by these international hackers.
Another testbed emulates a water treatment plant. It has industry-standard control systems, raw water tanks, filters, chemicals, just like the real thing.
If any vulnerability been discovered, they will try to simulate such an attack in the testbeds. We try to strengthen our defense by learning attacks.
In this test, the attacker sends malware that feeds the control system false sensor readings. The system is told that raw water levels are low when they're really high. The system automatically opens a valve to correct the issue, releasing more water into the nearly full tank. The raw water tank overflows, causing a flood. Amid the chaos, the attacker baffles the operator by making the system report that everything is fine.
So this is how we actually try to spoof the system to believe that it's performing the correct status.
A flooded water plant isn't the worst outcome of a cyber attack. Hackers could even turn our drinking water into a toxic brew.
How sure are you to know that the water you're drinking is safe? So for instance, slow poisoning. Attackers may compromise your chemical doser to add additional chemicals, which to you might not know it.
Should cyber attacks that hurt civilians be outlawed? As international conflicts spill into cyberspace, warfare may need new rules.
I'll try again.
It's not clear in international law whether it's legal or not to cyber attack a hospital.
I'm in.
And what really is acceptable and what is not acceptable is still very much up in the air.
Gaza, May the 5th, 2019. An Israeli airstrike blows up a civilian building. But this is no ordinary attack. The Israeli Defense Forces say the airstrike was launched on Hamas cyber operatives in retaliation for an attempted cyber attack against Israeli targets. This is the world's first announced use of physical weapons to stop cyber attacks.
When it comes to cyber attacks, Hamas is not posing a major threat to Israel. So I don't think that we'll see many cyber attacks escalating to kinetic attacks. But we do see that when countries use kinetic means on one another, the retaliation might come as a cyber attack, as we saw in the case of the US and Iran after the killing of Major General Soleimani.
On severe revenge, that's what Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is vowing after the US killed the Islamic Republic's top military commander, General Qasem Soleimani, in Baghdad on Friday.
In 2020, after the US assassinated a top Iranian general, Iran retaliated with cyber attacks against the US government.
Cyber is not going to replace conventional warfare. Conventional warfare and cyber attacks coming together.
At global hotspots where nations are in conflict, cyber warfare is often at play. Hostilities between North and South Korea have been going on since the Cold War and the Korean Civil War that cost 5 million lives. Since they agreed to stop fighting in 1953, their tanks and missiles have been locked in a standoff. But cyber weapons give the countries a new avenue to battle covertly and gain political victories.
북한의 어떤 사이버 병력은 한 10,000명 정도로 추정되고 있는데 북한은 보면 거의 2년마다 한 번씩 지난 10여 년 동안 보면 2009년, 2011년, 2013년, 2015년, 2017년 공격의 어떤 정도도 아까 말씀인 것처럼 점점 더 강화되고 있어서 2013년에는 아시는 것처럼 방송국, KBS 그리고 6개 어떤 뱅크에 대한 공격도 있었고 2015년도에는 이제 청와대에 대한 공격이 있었고 주로 그들이 했던 것은 정치적 그리고 심리적 목적으로 했거든요.
The idea of today's conflicts is to compel my enemy to accept my interest, using cyber information and other tools short of war in order to gain that political goal. In today's conflicts, they are permanent. There is no declaration of war. There is no fight on physical battlefields between large armies. There is no direct destruction of capitals in terms of, attaining victory.
In the 19th and 20th century, the world witnessed brutal wars. Such unprecedented cruelty prompted nations to agree on rules for war. the Geneva Conventions. The conventions outlaw inhumane battlefield weapons and tactics. It's now illegal for the military to target civilians, as well as the sick and wounded. Nearly 200 nations have ratified the Geneva Conventions. But with cyber warfare, the rules of engagement haven't been agreed upon.
The fact is right now, it's against international law to bomb a hospital or bomb a school. But it's not clear in international law whether it's legal or not to cyber attack school.
This is a little bit of a worry, because the sheer fact that there are no red lines and what really is acceptable and what is not acceptable is still very much up in the air actually gives a tremendous opportunity for the malicious actors.
I think one can look at all of these issues and ask, can't the technology sector solve this problem by itself? The answer is no. It is a resounding no, for one simple reason. Nation-state attacks are growing because of increasing investments that are leading to increasingly sophisticated cyber weapons. We simply cannot live in a safe and secure world unless there are new rules for the world.
To protect civilians from state-led cyber aggression, global corporations like Microsoft are urging nations to sign up to a digital Geneva Convention.
So the Digital Geneva Convention is one of several efforts that are underway to develop clear and binding legal obligations in cyberspace to protect citizens with respect to state-led or state-sanctioned cyber attacks. We need to create legal obligations that refrain states from undertaking the sort of cyber offensive activity that would have the impacts on civilians and on civilian infrastructure that I described.
We need these rules of engagement so that as this warfare becomes increasingly common, combatants recognize what would be an ethical way, of conducting warfare, albeit, in cyberspace.
International cyber laws can only work if states can be held responsible for their actions. But cyber warfare is covert and shadowy, and countries often deny carrying out cyber attacks.
So attributing cyber attack is indeed a problematic process, which even has a name, the attribution problem. Who did it? This is the main question. By examining the code, if it can trace it to the attacker. But cyber technology enables the attacker to hide himself or even to make it look like someone else did it.
Plausible deniability, attribution, ambiguity, all that becomes part of today's warfare.
There will always be fingerprints, but the question is, even if you have those fingerprints, how do you ensure, that you are able to stop, this perpetrator from repeating his attacks?
The rise in cyber attacks on small European states has accelerated cyber defense collaboration in the region. Finland's cybersecurity community builds on the idea of strength in unity. Usertech runs a cyber range here. They've partnered Singaporean Nio Beng Tong and Raja and Tan Technologies to establish a Singapore-Finland Center for Excellence in Cybersecurity.
There are many similarities between Singapore and Finland. First of all, we have a common population size. But two issues that stand out for me are our common focus on identifying the digital economy as the next engine of growth. And secondly, our decision to depend and rely on the capability of our people to leverage on the mass potential that the digital economy will give us.
Once the attacker attacks one organization, they can impact quite a wide area of your...
Organizations are transforming themselves to embrace the digital economy. And in doing so, all that data amassed by each and every organization would mean that the big bugbear to them would be data breaches. So the cyber simulation exercises can deal with preparedness for handling data breaches when it happens.
The center trains staff from critical infrastructure to respond to cyber threats through simulation exercises.
The Finns 10 years ago have started building up specific capabilities in preparing critical infrastructure, critical industry sectors to prepare themselves against cyber threats. This is pretty uncommon because most focus on cybersecurity today continues to be a military focus.
Yam University of Applied Sciences in central Finland is home to the National Cyber Range, where owners of critical infrastructure put their cyber defenses to the test.
We own Finland's national cyber range, which is called RGCE, Realistic Global Cyber Environment, which is one of the most advanced and comprehensive cyber ranges in the world. And the idea behind the RGCE is to be able to provide realistic exercises, not just for individuals or just one organization, but also multiple organizations at a time. It's large. It's not a lab, it's not a simulation, it's a real thing.
The Cyber Range helps conduct exercises with the national power grid operator, Fingrid.
For the defenders to find out what has really happened, what sort of things there are, and pinpoint the actual weakness that the attacker has been exploiting to gain access.
Fingrid, we own over 14,000 kilometers of power lines with 116 substations. Our main task is to keep lights on in Finland. Cybersecurity is one of our key activities because we are so critical operator in Finland. And exercising cybersecurity is the key for success.
We have a patient that represents the patients in the hospitals. We can see the heart rates, the respiratory. So we can demonstrate the actual impacts of cyber attacks towards the organizations, but not just the actual target, but also the collateral damage as well. So once the attacker gained access inside of the restricted environment that controls the whole electricity OT environment, they started to bring down parts of the electricity network, which therefore impacted the hospital and the patient care as well.
Each and every employee might face a cyber attack because it doesn't ask whether you are working for IT, so everybody needs to be involved. People need to be able to act when something happens.
Lessons gained from the exercises at Finland's National Cyber Range don't only benefit participating organizations, they also inform national and regional security plans.
Well, we believe that no preparedness plan is ready until it has been rehearsed at least once. And the exercises are very good ways to simulate and picturize what are the real problems we are dealing with. And that fits to the strategic level as well as technical level.
Their involvement in NATO and EU level projects very extensively. It gives you a very clear sense that the Finns, they have used the combination of their knowledge and their infrastructure to prove that their solution and their capability are in fact industry validated and battle tested. That is what we need in Singapore and in our region.
Just as Finland has become a centre of cybersecurity know-how for allies in the European Union and NATO, Singapore aims to be a cybersecurity hub for ASEAN.
Cybersecurity is borderless, so it's essential for us to engage regionally and internationally. Regionally, we are very active within ASEAN. We started the ASEAN Ministerial Conference for Cybersecurity, the AMCC, and we work actively with our ASEAN partners to raise the level of awareness for cybersecurity and to build capacity.
Singapore also plays a role in terms of capability building and incident response training for the CERTs, the emergency response teams. Is also quite useful.
And I really believe that in cyberspace, a small nation like Estonia, like Singapore, it can be a big nation in cyberspace. It can have a huge influence in the world.
A safer cyberspace will take more than international laws and alliances. Corporations and private enterprises must prepare to face cyber attacks.
A company big enough will have weak spots. It is impossible to protect everything.
It is essential that private sector companies take cybersecurity seriously.
For the people and the companies who don't think that a cyber attack will ever happen to them, I would say, trust me, it might happen sooner or later. It happened to us.
Norway, Oslo, March 2019. At the offices and production lines of Hydro, one of the world's largest aluminium companies, staff find their computers frozen. Operations grind to a halt. The entire network is held hostage by a hack of devastating proportions.
I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning by a WhatsApp message from the press officer on call, who said that we were hit by a massive cyber attack, that maybe all the business areas were hit, and that all production in the United States had been shut down, and that all our networks were shut down. And it was not a drill.
Thousands of PCs had locked up, and that there was a note saying that we were hit by a ransomware attack. Files were encrypted, and we could contact a couple of email addresses to know how much we had to pay and to get a solution.
Greetings. Your files are encrypted with the strongest military algorithms. We exclusively have decryption software for your situation. The final price depends on how fast you contact us. Hydro's management held an emergency meeting. They needed to make swift decisions.
In a situation like that, you act a lot on experience, you act on your gut feeling, you act on what feels like the right thing to do.
Hydro refused to pay. They shut down some plants. And for those they kept open, they mobilized retired employees to run them the old manual way.
Had we paid, then the hackers were still not out of the systems, right? So then you're still at their mercy. So paying is really not an option. It's at best maybe a temporary solution, but they can be back 2 months later. So we decided that we don't pay, we rebuild our backups and our systems, and we make sure that this time they're out and they can't get in anymore, to make sure that we have a long-term sort of freedom and that the hackers have no possibility to get even more money.
We knew that the right thing to do at that time was to be transparent, open, proactive in our communications. So this update will be an update on the operational and financial impact for Hydro.
Rather than keeping the incident secret, Hydro notified its thousands of employees, customers, and shareholders. Executives held daily press conferences and posted updates to Facebook. Hydro even welcomed journalists into their operation control rooms. And it paid off.
You would have expected that this kind of incident would, send a signal of kind of weakness of a company, that you don't have control and that it would have a negative impact on the trust from the shareholders. But the opposite happened. The share price went up. We saw that people and also our customers gave us feedback saying that they were amazed by how we handled it. It built trust because we were transparent and open about it.
The cyber attack cost Hydro an estimated 70 million euros, not counting the cost of rebuilding their network from scratch. But the company says it did the right thing.
Take that responsibility and be bold enough and courageous enough to actually be open and transparent about it. It is a good thing. It also helps other companies to know what to do in such a situation and so that we together can combat and fight cyber attackers and not give in to the hackers, actually have an effect, a wider societal effect. And I think that that is part of our social responsibility.
Norway's Hydro case is held up by cybersecurity authorities as a model of crisis management and open incident reporting.
Our modern society is highly interconnected. We depend on each other whether we realize it or not. So in the case of cybersecurity, it's essential that we share information with each other quickly so that other people in other sectors can raise their level of alertness and be prepared in the area of cybersecurity.
Firstly, it's humbling, but the fact is, if hackers want to attack you, they will succeed. A company big enough will have weak spots. It is impossible to protect everything.
As Singapore is an open and connected city-state, its businesses are at risk of cyber attacks. A threat to one company could endanger others.
So transportation grids, energy security grids, finance grids, all the networks are somehow systematically interconnected. And if you find vulnerability in any of those grids, you can, in theory, basically disrupt all the other grids.
Cybersecurity is a team sport. No one agency or even the government as a whole can manage cybersecurity by itself. In fact, of the critical information infrastructure, 77% of them are private sector companies. A lot of the things that you and I use on a daily basis, how we live, how we work, how we play, are provided by private sector companies. So it is essential that private sector companies take cybersecurity seriously.
Singtel is Singapore's largest telecommunications company and an internet service provider behind much of Singapore's internet architecture. In recent years, it's been investing deeply in cybersecurity.
5 years ago, we realized this huge opportunity on the back of enterprises' digitalization and Singapore aiming to be a smart nation. We know that the cyber threats will be growing tremendously, and therefore we invested in this by acquiring a large US entity called Trustwave. And that is an acquisition that brought about the skill sets, the talent, and the infrastructure from a cyber defense standpoint. 1,000 over people we brought in specialized skills in cybersecurity. Many of them have 20 to 30 years experience in this industry.
We've actually been protecting infrastructure, critical infrastructure within Singapore when it comes to things like water treatment facilities, even trains and rail systems, but also things as simple as traffic lights and traffic flow. We train the people who are actually responsible for managing this everyday operational technology so that they have better security awareness in order to prevent breach and attack against those specific technologies and those specific control systems. In any organization, in any company, the weakest link is usually the people. So it's really important to educate and help people, the employees, to actually be able to protect themselves.
If I had locked up from this session, then my attacker would not be able to go in. Okay? Any questions? Okay, ready? Let's go. Go to the cyber range now. You can bring your bags along.
Trustwave's mission is also to grow the local cybersecurity industry, with a view especially on attracting and nurturing homegrown talent.
It's really important to engage the youth in Singapore because, first of all, there is a worldwide shortage of security professionals.
Some recommendations for the red team themselves would be to actually go together as a team and try and overwhelm the blue team all in one shot. Blue team, try and form out a strategy on how we want to defend. We'll give you some time to try and explore the place, try and adjust yourself to controls first also.
We think that it's really important to make it fun for them to learn about cybersecurity, and we do things like wargaming and simulation to be able to help them understand what role they could potentially play in protecting themselves and others in the dangerous world of cybersecurity.
3, 2, 1. Oh, the time is up and the blue team has won. All right, give it a hand. Congratulations to the blue team.
Cybersecurity talent is nurtured in different ways. Singapore's Block 71 holds one of the densest clusters of tech startups in the world. And ICE 71 is its new hub for cybersecurity startups.
I-71 stands for Innovation Cybersecurity Ecosystem at Block 71. We wanted to build an entrepreneurial hub for cybersecurity-related activities in Singapore.
Beyond funding and supporting cybersecurity ventures, I-71 runs boot camps to introduce people to the cybersecurity business through talks and meetups with industry players.
It's essentially a one-week program which helps to give people the opportunity who are themselves cybersecurity professionals or academics in university or even students a much better understanding of what it would take for them to take that big step and decide to go and join or create their own startup.
The boot camp allows participants to test out their business ideas and their commercial viability.
My startup idea here is to actually make cybersecurity fun again, trying to gamify the cybersecurity arena so that everybody thinks that cybersecurity is so cool, it's going to be fun, and it makes it to their second nature.
I've talked to several startup co-founders here in Singapore, and they've said very, very great things about the government support here. There's a ton of funding that any cybersecurity startup can look for.
I want to find out more about how I can actually play a part in order to make the whole ecosystem in Singapore even stronger and position our cyber defense, which is our 6th national defense pillar, to be even stronger.
Having a strong, robust startup ecosystem in the cybersecurity space is very important because there are going to be some ideas which I think are going to percolate up from individuals and entrepreneurs.
Talents attract talents, and so a vibrant ecosystem will attract innovative companies to come to Singapore, and from there be able to develop Singapore as an iconic hub for innovative cybersecurity solutions.
By 2021, it's actually estimated that there's going to be a shortage of cybersecurity professionals to the tune of 3.5 million jobs in cybersecurity that will go unfilled.
To meet the demands of the cyber battlefield, the country could turn to an old yet renewable resource. A stream of cyber warriors is rising from the ranks of the country's national servicemen.
Just as the Singapore Armed Forces defend Singapore against threats, we also have to defend Singapore against advanced cyber threats.
Singapore has a four-pronged cybersecurity strategy. Having a resilient infrastructure, making a safer cyberspace, developing a vibrant cybersecurity ecosystem, and building strong international partnerships. Due to its efforts, Singapore ranks highly in the Global Cybersecurity Index. It ranks first in Asia-Pacific and 6th in the world. But Singapore can't afford to rest on its laurels.
The issue of cybersecurity is not how well we compare with other countries. The issue of cybersecurity is how well we compare against the threats and malicious actors from the entire world.
Access denied. In about 1 minute. I'm in.
So in cyber warfare, geography doesn't matter. The code can be again sent from anywhere in the world. Your traditional defenses and deterrence mechanisms may not be as effective with regard to cyber.
And now we take good care. Of my rifle. At all times. Forward. Sanjo. Stop.
Defending the nation from foreign threats has long been the role of the military. In the face of global cyber threats, the armed forces have had to adapt.
Cyber domain is emerging as a new frontier for battle and a new frontier in which countries will engage in contest. So just as the Singapore Armed Forces defend Singapore against threats, we also have to defend Singapore against advanced cyber threats in the cyber domain.
It should be doable, but you need to figure out how are you going to find out what is the server's IP and your own IP address.
2 years of national service is compulsory for all male Singapore citizens. From this stream of young, talented conscripts, the armed forces has begun selecting and grooming cyber warriors.
Cyber NSF scheme was launched 2 years ago. We really wanted to do this to broaden the pool of people from which we could draw cybersecurity expertise. So the Cyber NSF scheme allows us to reach out to all pre-enlistees, and we do this for about 20,000 pre-enlistees a year. Reach out and look for people who already have some level of training, some level of knowledge, expertise, or even people who have interest and demonstrate aptitude for this.
The server file and the client file. So it's just a very simple client and server, but they can't talk to each other yet.
Through a rigorous process, we are able to then identify for each cohort groups of soldiers who we can deploy into the scheme. Apart from doing the training in university, we also deploy them in our units, and we train them up in our own cyber defense school to be able to do this. Cyber defense school basically equips them with skills and knowledge, and then test them out in our own training facilities. One such facility is our Cyber Test and Evaluation Center, or CyTech. Treated as a live firing range. The soldiers are then subjected to realistic scenarios that are exposed to real malware that we have been able to isolate and allow them to fight a virtual battle against these threats, against sometimes a real red team. In doing so, we are able to fine-tune their techniques, tactics, procedures, so that they have the confidence and ability to operate in this domain and to be able to defend our cyberspace well. Today, we have about 140 Cyber NSF who have gone through the system, and they have benefited greatly from the training as well as the deployment. We see that this is going to be a new area of growth for us, not just getting defenders to come into our system, but we think that this will continue to plow back into the national ecosystem when they ORD to subsequently contribute to the cyber defense of Singapore and to the build-up of the pool of professionals in the ecosystem.
Okay, so on to the bug hunting journey. I just want to excite you guys a bit and maybe show you a bit more of a reality of what it's like. If you guys want to sign up for it, anyone can sign up to start being a bug hunter.
Military service is just one way to involve youths in cybersecurity. These 16 to 19-year-olds are here today for a cybersecurity meetup organized by Cyber Youth Singapore, a not-for-profit cybersecurity interest group for youths by youths.
The cybersecurity capabilities of the entire government, make sure the entire government is safe. From the military to schools, everything taken by the government.
Cyber Youth Singapore's CEO, Ben Chua, is just 19. But he's already organized cybersecurity events for over 180 youths.
As we grow older, we just become more conservative. It's an inevitable thing because we experience life and it really makes us more scared to try new things. But with youth, there's certain naivety that comes with it, and that naivety leads to a certain boldness and aggression. And aggression really allows this organization to push very far.
The external cannot tell whether it's inside or not.
What he suggested was that the router was the gateway into each group. We have accomplished things that no one expected us to. Just like the camp in December. No one expected us to push a camp at SMU for about 100 youths, but we ended up doing it. And because we really believed in the vision and mission, and the youths really rallied, I strongly believe in investment into youths, and we shouldn't let the potential of youths go to waste. That's the issue that I was trying to address, because if the entire network's encrypted...
While Ben and his team have accepted the reality that cyber attacks will be a constant fixture in our future, they believe that we can create a more cyber-secure tomorrow for Singapore by harvesting the power of our youth today.
Okay, so what has happened when I run the program %X%N without a dot?
Cyber attacks happen every day, whether they are state-sponsored or not. They just have different motivations. And the role of youths, we're going to inherit this country. And really the point of Cyber Singapore is to make sure that the country we are growing into is cyber resilient and cyber ready. And so that when we take over those jobs in the future, it's a much easier life for us. So we have less cyber threats to deal with, and our peers, fellow citizens, are cyber educated. They know how to use devices securely and safely. It will definitely make our lives easier.
Digital defense is a wider concept than just cybersecurity. It covers cybercrime, personal data, online falsehoods. Ultimately, we have to raise the overall level of awareness in our population, both young people as well as older people. And we need to raise the level of what I would call cyber hygiene, basic instincts that we adopt when we go online.
The digital natives of the future going to grow up in a time of vulnerability, risk, and opportunity, and to grow up in a world which is, to some degree, compromisable or already compromised. That's going to be a very, very interesting future.
So you cannot become too complacent by saying, okay, we have cybersecurity strategy, we have the organization in place, we have all these elements, and that's why we are cyber secure. Because that's the moment you basically lose your guard and adversaries can pick it up and find a weak point.
The nature of the threat is a dynamic one. It is evolving all the time. And because of that, we need to ensure that we are constantly working at it. In other words, you keep your eye on the ball and keep adapting to the situation.
In an age of secret cyber wars, neither governments, nor corporations, nor laws can keep us safe all the time. Our defense rests on the commitment of every citizen.